So first of all, let's take just a second to talk about what Skills is. Skills is a multifunctional tool that is an online tool to be used in the treatment of autism. If there's one thing I can say about Skills is that it does so many different things that it's actually a little hard to talk about, because providers can use Skills as a curriculum and as an assessment tool and as a way to build behavior intervention plans and a way to track progress for kids. Teachers can use it as an interdisciplinary tool to be able to communicate with other teachers and say, I'm working on this lesson, here I'm tracking this progress, and then be able to turn it over to the OT and the speech and have them all collaborate on it. But parents can use it also. I use Skills and I love it. So I wanted to take this from the point of view of a parent and help you guys out with starting to use Skills and starting with the assessment. Now, an assessment is something that assesses. Don't you hate explanations that use the same word? But if we're trying to get a look at where we are in this moment in time, and that's really what anybody should do before teaching anything, because who has time to waste teaching something that somebody already knows, right? So if I'm going to teach you how to downhill ski, probably the first thing I'm going to do is ask you, have you ever downhill skied before? Do you know how to downhill ski? How much downhill skiing have you done? I have never downhill skied in my life, so it's a bad example because I don't even know what I would ask you to. But before I start to teach it, I should know where you already have expertise, because let's say that you already know how to stick your skis together to slow down, then I'm not going to start teaching there, right? I might check to see if you can do it and how well you do it and you're using proper form, but then I'm going to move on to the next skill along the way, right? So always a good idea, and I will tell you as a parent, I know that it's something parents get excited about if we know exactly where our child is. How many times was I, as we were starting out, saying to people, well, where is my child compared to other kids? Like, you know, can you show me any kind of a representation of, give me a snapshot of where am I? How bad is it? How far behind are we? Well, if you've wondered and asked somebody these questions and not really gotten the answer you wanted, I'm telling you, Skills assessment is the best possible use of your time, because you will get a snapshot in time of where your child is right now on a whole bunch of different skill levels, and you'll be able to see, wow, this is where my kid's strength is, wow, this is where my child is the most behind, and you can make decisions about how you want to spend your treatment hours based on that. How amazing would that be? And it's in your hands. The power is in your hand. You can do it today. You can find Skills by going to skills4autism.com. Okay, and when you go there, there's a button that you can push to start, right? It will ask you for a credit card. Keep in mind that everyone who starts with Skills gets 14 days for free. They will not bill your credit card until the 15th day. So you do need to put in a credit card, though. That's the way that works. And if you don't cancel it by the 15th day, you will be charged for the next month. But I think that if it's a very reasonable amount of money, and I think that if you go in and start on the assessment, you will see, this is worth it. I also want to say to those of you who you look at the amount of the monthly and say, wow, it is a very reasonable amount, but it's still outside the limits of what I can afford for where we are right now. Believe me, I get that. I want you to know, I want to beg and plead with you to let the Skills folks know that that is your situation, because they work in conjunction with Autism Care and Treatment today. And one of the things that Autism Care and Treatment loves to do is to fund families for Skills for an entire year. That they've done it on many occasions, and they say to me all the time, we just don't get that many people who are asking us to fund that. I wish that would change. If you need the funding for it, ask them for the funding. They know that for them, it's a very small grant amount, and they know that if families have already looked at it and know how to use it and want to use it, that they will get so much mileage out of it. So check it out. Okay. So what I've done is I have already logged into my account, and when you start with Skills, you will get a username and a password. Obviously, I'm not going to share that with you here, my username and password, but it's very simple and you can figure out how to do that. And then you log into your account, you put your username and your password in, and it will give you something called the dashboard. And of course, I should have started out a little bit further, but Calby's going to show you my screen now. And I've already zeroed in a little bit on my dashboard, and I want you to see that it says Skills on it, and it says my children over here, and I have multiple fake children. I just want you to know that these are not real children. These are ways that I can go in and show somebody else how to do it, ways that I can look up something on Skills so that I'm looking at something other than my child, because every child is different, right? And I love to look at this so that I can help you guys to be able to do it. But I want you to notice that there are numbers across the top that say choose a child, start assessment, choose activity, and start treatment. Okay, and they're green, but they'll show me which page I'm on. It's lit up in red, and that easily tells me, okay, I'm on choose a child. Now, if you don't have any children in there to start with, it won't show these people, like I have Fred 4, Britt B, and Hans F. Fake children. Now, we're not disclosing anything. You'll see that I've got their birth date here, the caregiver, activities in progress, and progress assessment. And these are things that I've added to look at the assessment in particular. You'll see over here to the side that it says skills training video and add a child. So I'm going to go right now to add a child, because this is what you guys will do. Except I am on a thing. Kelby, I don't, oh, there we go. It did go to it. I don't know how to use something without a mouse. I'm inept. In any case, okay, so now I get a thing and it tells me required fields here, and I need to add a child. So I'm gonna, and it has required fields that I've got to do it. Now, if you're like me and so many other autism parents, we get like, oh, you know, who has access to this information? I'm going to put personal information about my child. I get fatutzt when I feel this. I'm like anxiety ridden. Who has information to this? This is any information you put on Skills goes to it's more secure than what your bank has. Believe me, I'm as paranoid as they come. It's very, very, very secure. Nobody gets your child's information. Okay, so I'm going to put in TOO. I don't need to put in a middle name if I don't want to, and I'm going to say the last name is Walker, or Waller, because that's what I'm typing here. I'm going to say that this is a male child, and then I get to birth date. And by the way, if you're paranoid and you don't want to put in your child's real name, you know, no one is going to bother with that. Put whatever name that you want to. But when it gets to birth date, and I know that a lot of times this is where we get the most concerned about, this is private information about my child. They'll be able to link it to my child. Who has this information? Again, safest possible place for this. And you can lie about everything else on here that you want to, but do not lie about the birth date. Or if you absolutely feel that you have to lie by 1 day or 5 days or, you know, 10 days, but don't lie about more than that, because it makes a difference in what lessons it shows you. So, and I can't even begin to express how many times people have started out with their free trial, and they go in and they go, well, I'm not going to put my child in, and they put some wild and woolly date in there. The first time I did it, I did the same thing. And then you spend some time on the assessment, and you find as you're doing the assessment, you go, oh, I really kind of want to know what my child, if my child, well, how my child will look in this, and you start answering questions for your child, but you don't get to where you want to because you put in the wrong date, and they cannot fix it for you. You have to start all over again. So it's the one thing you must put in the proper date. So I'm going to say that this child was born in August, and I'm going to say 13th, and because I'm making up the child, I'm going to say they were born in 2012. Now you'll notice that it says confirm the birth date. And that's because everything that you do from this moment on in the assessment is going to be geared towards this child. Now, why, you ask? Why is this the case? Because Skills never gives you lessons that are inappropriate for a child, because they surpass what they should be knowing about. Okay. For instance, we don't want to teach a 3-year-old how to enter a conversation when it's a group. That is beyond what a 3-year-old socially should know. So you won't get to see that lesson for a 3-year-old. And you think to yourself, well, I want to see all the lessons. You don't. There's 6,000. You want to be able to see what's appropriate for your child. Eventually, you'll get to the point where, you'll see all the lessons that are appropriate for your child. But no one has time. No one has time when they're treating a child to go through and read all of the lessons. If you want to know what the progression of the lessons is, buy the card book, Evidence-Based Treatment for Children with Autism. It'll outline it all there. You'll get to read what the progression is. But don't waste that time on skills. This is valuable, valuable time. You get a choice to put in a nickname. Like I might want to call this child Stan. That for his nickname, and you get to put in an address if you want to and not if you don't want. It's not a required field. Here is one that is required though. Have you started an ABA program already? Yes or not. I'm going to put in yes. It does affect some of the questions that they ask you. If yes, then when. And I can say I'm not sure what the format is here, 2012. I'm going to say 2014. Let's see if it takes it. There is a space where I can put my child's IQ, but I can select unknown. Totally up to you. And you might ask, why are they asking this kind of information? Because they're going to track progress. There is also a back end on skills that disassociates information about your child from the data so that they can use it for research. Because one of the end goals of skills is to phenotype autism and to be able to show progress with different types of autism. No one can ever, even the researchers have no way of linking it back to you. Then it asks for caregiver information, and I'm going to put my name in here. And I put 3 N's, unfortunately, but I'm not going to fix that. And my relationship, I can put other, parent, supervisor, teacher, or therapist. And for this one, I'm going to say parent. And then you'll notice that there's another asterisk here that it wants to know what the autism diagnosis was. I can put autistic disorder, Asperger, PDD-NOS, other, or not diagnosed yet. And I'm going to say not diagnosed yet, okay? And if I put other, there is a box for me to put another diagnosis, because there are many people who use skills who have other diagnoses. And there is a tab here where I can get more information, but I'm going to submit this information. Now, automatically it adds this child to my list of children. So I can scroll down, can't remember what I called this child, Stan W. Yeah, but it put in the nickname. So we're going down to Stan W. And it says here the birth date that I had put in, and it says that he is 2 years, 6 months. So I'm going to click on Stan W, and it takes me to my dashboard where I can see information just about this child. And you see the name there, the 2 Waller, but it said Stan on the other because I put in his nickname. I've got the nickname. It says that I'm Shannon P. I'm the parent. Okay, so we may need to go to the screenshots that I did. Anyway, I'm going to click here, Start Assessment. I'm going to move on to number 2. We'll come back to this dashboard in a little while, but I'm going to move on to Start Assessment. Okay, and you'll see that the first thing that I get are screening questions. Okay. And depending on how old your child is, I'm anxious to see, it'll have, and depending on how you answer them, it gives me a count here. It says you have fewer than 11 questions left in the screening question. Now, if you're starting skills, I would say to you, depending on how gung-ho you are, do the screening questions, log in, get all this set up, and do the screening questions on the first day. And then we're going to take your temperature afterwards to see whether you move on. But this is a good bit of work for one day to just do the screening questions. And this is true for everyone. So, okay, it says, can your child use speech, sign language, or an alternative form of communication? For example, a picture exchange communication system, PECS, speech generating device, Makaton, etc., so that he or she is communicating is understood. What they're communicating is understood. Now, I understand what that question is. I do. But if I don't, then I always have the option of clicking View Example. And when I click View Example, it says you should only answer no to this question if your child has no means to effectively and appropriately use words to communicate. If your child is able to communicate using speech or via means of augmentative or alternative communication, or if the communication is limited, you should indicate yes to this question so that you have the opportunity to answer questions that will better define your child's ability. Now, for the sake of argument, I am going to say no, that this child has absolutely no means of communication that is understood by somebody else. And watch what happens to my number of questions. Oh, I have to submit. I was waiting for it to do it right then. I have to continue. So I push no and I go to continue. It says, please wait. And it only lowered it to 10. I'm not going to answer all of these, and then we're going to take a break. But can your child stand with support? Because, and you think to yourself, why are they asking me this? Because if your child cannot stand with support, then they're not going to ask you a bunch of motor questions. But they are going to give you a bank of lessons to help you to get your child to the point where your child can stand with support. And if your child can stand with support, you don't need those lessons. So I'm going to say no, that my child cannot stand with support. And I've still got 9 questions. I'm surprised. I thought it was going to lower it exponentially, because sometimes if you answer a question a certain way, it just all of a sudden says you're done. Can your child stand without support? I'm going to say no and continue on. I've still got 8 questions. Next question, can your child physically move his or her legs? I'm going to say yes, but they're not standing without support or not standing with support, right? I think these are pretty, and now my question's lowered to 7. So it took 1 question out. So you can see that these change. Can your child physically move his or her arms? I'm going to say yes. And it's so important, because if your child cannot, you don't want to be having to answer more questions about that. My next question, can your child physically move his or her hands? I'm going to say yes. I'm down to 5 questions. I'm going to keep answering these questions as we go to a break here. My next question is your child able to see with or without corrective lenses? So you can see these are fairly cut and dry questions. They are depending on your child's ability. For some of you, you're going to breeze through these questions and they're not going to be hard questions to answer. They're not going to bring up emotional distress. But if you're getting to the point where you're saying no to these, you're going to notice that you're going to start to feel kind of bummed. Like, oh no, my child can't do that. What does that mean for me? What does that mean for my life? And that is typical. That is going to happen. When you are in a set of questions, any set of questions, and you feel yourself emotionally starting to shut down, I want to encourage you to just finish the questions you have on the page and take a break. Go and do something for yourself. Remind yourself when you're doing something that's good and pleasant for you, whether it's just sitting back and closing your eyes for a minute, making yourself a cup of coffee or a cup of herbal tea. Remind yourself why you're doing this. You're taking this assessment to see where your child is so that you can find the exact moment to start teaching with the exact lesson to help your child to get to the next level. So important that we remind ourselves of the why we're doing it so that we can, and to be kind to ourselves, because this is an emotional thing. Right? Okay. We just finished doing the screening questions. We logged into a skills account. We created a new child. We answered the beginning information about the child. And most especially, the biggest, most important thing is that we were accurate with their birth date. As I mentioned, if you're really paranoid about letting people have information about your child that's shared on the internet, keep in mind that the security on skills is tighter than what your bank has. So it's a pretty amazing thing. But if you're still worried about it and you want to change your child's birth date, the only thing I can say to you is just change it by a few days. Put the year and the month in correctly. And what you will see is over time, it will, when your child has a birthday, if my child has a birthday now, it will give me more questions and it'll give me more skills that are appropriate for my child. So do not put the year incorrectly. Okay, so then we went to the next step, which was answering the screening questions. There are very broad-based questions about what our child's ability are. We answered all of those questions and pushed enter on the very last one. And now it has taken me back to my assessment dashboard, which is slightly different than my regular dashboard. You'll see that under the little push pin here, and I'm going to go in a little bit closer here. Under my push pin here, it says my child's name, which we made up a name, 2 Waller. I still have my choose child on my dashboard. I have my start assessment, my choose activity, and over to the side where you can't see start treatment. But you'll see that before my 1 was lit up red, now my 2 is lit up red because I'm on the start assessment page. Now, as I scroll down here, I've got a bunch of different tabs that I can take a look at. It says list all skills by lesson curriculum and search skill by keywords or topics. So now we're going to split off into 2 different groups here about who is taking this assessment as a parent. And what is your point of taking the assessment? And there are different reasons for taking the assessment. If you are, let's say, a new card client, and your child is about to start getting ABA services, you will be asked to do and complete the skills assessment, the entire thing, as your child, while your funding is being processed and a team is being gathered, which takes a little bit of time. You'll be asked to do your skills assessment. Your therapy won't start until you're done, so it's got to be a priority for you to get it done, right? So for you, you're going to start and, with the intent of answering all the questions before you move on to treatment. So you're not going to use the search skill and keyword topics until you're done. When you're done, if you still haven't started therapy, then we're going to talk about that. But you want to get done and get the whole thing banged out and out of the way. You're going to do a good job on it, but you're going to get it banged out of the way. Now, if you're somebody who isn't about to be a card client, but you're interested in doing an ABA program in your home, whether it's with an ABA provider that you have found who will work with you on skills, or you're doing it on your own, depending on what they're saying and how you feel, you eventually are going to want to get to the point where you have completed the entire assessment, but you might be in a place where you're like, I want to start right now, and I know that what we want to work on is toileting. That's the number one thing that I'm concerned about. I do want to find out where my child is in comparison on all of the other skills, but I really want to get started on the toileting. Then you would go to search skill by keywords or topics. You would put in toileting and see the lessons that are there and pick a lesson for yourself. But right now, we're going to stay on the list all skills by lesson curriculum. Okay, you see there that it has a tab. It says that right now I'm in the social curriculum, and this is one of the toughest things to get used to in the skills program, is that it starts always in the social. I don't know why, but it does. And there are different colors. That helps you to know which one you're in, but it'll always tell you which one it's in. And if I want to change that, I've got a drop-down menu over here. It says curriculum and it says social. If I click it, it gives me all the other curricular areas. I can go to motor, and you see that the color, when it shows up there, the color where it says lesson name changed from a blue to a kind of rose pink. Okay, but I'm going to go back to the social curriculum, because I do like to start in the social curriculum. I think it's got something for all of us, and maybe that's why it's the place to start. If at any time I am unhappy with my answer that I gave on anything, I can go to the assessment history and I can go back and change something. That's a good thing to know, but we want to, as much as possible, not have to redo things, right? We want to be able to do things and get them done the first time. So I'm in the social curriculum, and for this child, because they're very young and because I answered specific questions about what they could and couldn't do, it has given me a list of different things. Now, you might be a teacher and have multiple children, or you yourself might be a parent who has 2 or even 3 children who are on the autism spectrum, and you might find that it will give you different lessons. That's okay, because it's going off of what you already told it about what the child can do and how old they are. So this first one says that the lesson name is compliance. It is under the social rules domain. It is a level 1, and the number of questions are 2. In the beginning, when you start to do it, you're not really going to care very much about any of those different things, but at different points in the process, all of those things are going to start to make sense and be important to you. Level 1 are the easiest. They are the most basic beginning skills that we want to be working on, and you see that there are only 2 questions in this one. When I was doing this, and I think I am the only person in the history of skills that had to do the complete and total assessment 2 different times, because I was in the test group that did it on paper first and then did it on the computer. And it's a lot to get through, and you have to kind of pace yourself and give yourself reinforcement. And so I would say to myself, all right, I'm going to fill out 2 different areas from each curricula. And at first it was a week, and then I sped it up to per day because I wanted to get it done and get it, and so you start to look, oh, it's only 2 questions. That's going to count as 1 area, and it's 2 questions. I'm for sure going to do that. Now, if I'm not planning on doing the whole assessment, or there's something I specifically want to work on first, I could click the little eye icon, and it'll give me information about what the lesson, it gives me a little pop-up about what the purpose lesson is. The purpose of this lesson is to teach a child to comply with basic requests given by therapists, parents, teachers, and other caregivers across the home, school, and other community settings. The indirect goal is to teach the child compliance behavior. And you'll see that I can print that out. I can put it in larger text. I can, give that to somebody if I want to, but I don't want to. If I want to, I can click on the little movie thing, and I can watch a movie where somebody explains exactly what is in that little eye box. It's not going to do more than that, but it is a little video of somebody explaining that to me. Because there are some people who like to see it textually, other people who like to see a face. It's up to you. Always with a question area, I have the option, once I've looked at the eye, and I know my child has no compliance whatsoever, that there is none of that whatsoever, I have the option at any point of clicking no. And it will automatically answer all of the things in that area as no. Be careful, though. You don't want to waste time. It will make all of the lessons available to you, but you don't want to waste time on things that you don't do. So I'm going to click on the little pencil under Start Assessment. It's going to take me in to those 2 questions. So my first question here, does your child demonstrate age-appropriate levels of compliance across people while in the home setting? Note that typically developing children are not compliant in 100% of opportunities. Indicate yes if your child is generally compliant with instructions that he or she understands and you do not have concerns with his or her level of compliance. And now again, I can click example here. For example, some basic compliance instructions include come here, no, don't, sit down, clean up, all done, stop, wait, and give me, as well as compliance instructions associated with basic household routines such as eating meals, dressing, bathing, housing, chores, and doing work as age appropriate. It's important to consider relevant activities and people with whom the child should comply. So I have 3 choices here. I have yes, no, and probe. Now, here's the thing about yes, no, and probe. If I know that my child can do this and I don't want to waste any time working on this because this is not a problem in my life, then I'm going to put yes, they can absolutely do it. If I know 100% sure that my child is not compliant, this is a problem in my life, I'm going to put no. If I don't know for sure, I have 2 choices. I have the choice that I can click probe, and later on when I'm all done, I can print out a sheet that says probe. Now you will see that there are some things that you just have no idea. I was answering a question for my child the other day, and I was like, you know what? I don't know if he can do that. It was a question about crossing the midline, that if I put something on the table and I put it, and I asked my son to put one hand behind his back, will he cross the midline with the other hand to pick it up? And I thought, I just don't know whether he can do that. That's a complete and total blank. That one, I clicked probe because I just don't know. And it's going to become my little science experiment. I haven't had time to do it yet, but I'm going to set up the circumstance to see if he easily crosses the midline. My guess is he probably does because I've never noticed a problem. But you know what? I just don't know. Now, other times you think, well, you get into a discussion in your head and you think, well, you know what? Sometimes my child is really compliant with me, but the teacher says he's not compliant, or he's not compliant with me, but the teacher says he's totally fine, so I don't know what to push. When you get into a debate in your head, put no, because that means that they're not doing it to the level that you want them to do it, and the answer is no. Because what you're saying then is, I think there's at least one area where we still need to work on it, so the answer is no. Don't waste time debating. If it's 100%, gee, I have no idea, probe. If you're like, I'm not sure, do they mean this? It's no. It's no, because you'll have the opportunity to pick between the lessons later on. It will save you time. Don't go down the hallway of, oh, I just don't know. It will not work. So for this, I'm going to say no. The child is not compliant. I'm going to answer the second question, which is, does your child demonstrate age-appropriate levels of compliance across people while in community settings? Note that typically developing children are not compliant in 100% of opportunities. Indicate yes if your child is generally compliant with instructions that he or she understands and you do not have concerns with his or her level of compliance. I don't know anyone who has a 2.5-year-old who doesn't have I'm going to click no. I don't know any typically developing children where we couldn't work on compliance and have things get better. Okay, so I'm safe in saying, let's say no. I want to work on this, is what you're saying when you say no. All right, notice that I've got two choices down here. I have submit and continue, or I have submit and go back to assessment. Okay, this is where we go to our two different sets of parents. If you are having to fill out the whole assessment, I want you to be brave and bold and submit and push the one that says submit and go back to assessment. Why? Because you're going to get the assessment done faster. You just will. You're going to go back to the assessment. You're going to answer the next set of questions. And by the way, you don't have to answer them in order. You can pick the ones that have the least amount of questions. If you're trying to get the whole thing done, set yourself whatever goal you want for how much you want to achieve on a certain day. And I'm going to show you a really cool trick about that in a minute. If you are the parent who wants to start working on compliance today, if you are somebody who that's what you're starting your ABA program and you're leading the charge here, or you've already got your ABA provider and you want to be working on this today, then you hit submit and continue. Because what will happen, and I'll show you, you hit submit and continue and my little red dot has moved to choose activity. Because now my little dashboard here looks significantly different. It still tells me that I'm in the social curriculum. It tells me that I'm in the lesson section in the child's home. Notice that it says here curriculum and it says social, and it will always take you to social first. So if I've answered a question in the motor, I want to drop that down to the motor, and it shows me the lessons that it's giving me to choose from. What it's telling me is we've found some lessons for you to pick from, something that you might want to work on. And notice that it says level 1 compliance. It's in the domain of social rules. If I click on the thing here, it's going to show me other things that have to do with this. It shows me level 1, level 3. I can go to personal information. I can go to level 4, responding in unison. I can click down to see lessons, but right now I'm in level 1, and we usually want to follow these levels. There are exceptions to this, but if I'm starting out, I should start with level 1 instead of starting with level 3. It shows me here my activity text, and it just gives it to me in a very short way. It says SD compliance instruction. My response, the child responds to compliance instruction within a certain number of seconds. Okay, this is when we're getting into treatment, and this has got a whole host of things that go along with it. But today we're only talking about the assessment. But I do want you to know as a parent that you can click on these things, you can add it to your treatment program. It will open up a much bigger document. It will tell you step by step how to teach this. And we'll, on another date, talk about what the SD and the target response and what all these little boxes here symbolize, because they're so incredibly cool. But I just wanted to show you that that's where you will go, and it takes you down a rabbit hole of, oh, I want to do this. I really want to work on a lesson because I want to see how I would do this. How does it all work? If you're trying to get the assessment done, don't bring yourself down this path. I am going to go back up to start assessment. And if I click on the little dot, it will take me back. Now I've got my red dot. And I can move on to the next thing. You'll notice that the compliance thing has gone off my list, and now I've got eye contact. I just want to show you the plethora, love that word, of the things that are available just in the social curriculum. We kind of talked about this the other day. Eye contact, non-vocal imitation, joint attention, gaining attention, social referencing, assertiveness, greetings and salutation, compliments, apologizing. There are more things that are in the social curriculum, but they are for kids that are older than 2.5. So there are some areas of the assessment that I'm not even being asked the questions because it isn't appropriate for a 3-year-old to be able to do.